Welfare Resurrected through Christian Communities. On October 2nd, 2006, a terrible tragedy occurred. A young man entered into an Amish school and shot 10 young girls, and then shot himself. 5 of these bright young ladies died from their wounds. And questions began to arise. How would the families react? How would justice be administered? Would the families ever feel closure? But the Amish community shocked the world. They forgave the shooter within hours of his crime. Terry and Chuck Roberts, parents of the shooter, recall some events that happened after the funeral. Their Amish neighbor Henry came by and offered them support, and the first couple to greet them after the funeral of their son was a couple that had lost 2 daughters in the shooting. Pastor Tom Beck, the pastor of the Roberts Church, comments on forgiveness of the Amish, saying, quote, "Amazing because it was instant. That's huge. Their forgiveness transcends." End quote. Forgiveness is the most difficult part of grief. So many wonder how it is possible for an Amish community to forgive a man that had done them so much harm. This is possible through a community coming together to aid one another. This is the type of mutual aid that helps individuals and communities. I would define welfare as mutual aid within a community. More specifically, the Christian idea of welfare is a community coming together through the church to aid one another. Welfare is a very common problem today. It has gone from an idea of community to a status organization. There are 3 parts of welfare: Social Security, unemployment, and healthcare. While federal welfare is essentially just taking money from those who aren't on the programs and giving it to those who are. For my definition of welfare, which is mutual aid, the first civilization to embody this was the Roman Empire. In order to receive benefits from the state, you had to make sacrifices. And so citizens would form a type of club, and in order to reap the benefits, you had to sacrifice. Now, the Christians were at a disadvantage because they would not sacrifice to anyone but the true and living God. So they created their own parallel structures that were based on love, not pagan sacrifices. Also, in Byzantium, which is one of the most prominent ancient Christian civilizations, the church created hospitals, hospices, orphanages, old age homes, rehab facilities, which were all funded by the church and the monasteries. The Amish are another excellent example of a community coming together to aid one another. Their entire community is based on mutual aid. Now, some history into the idea of welfare. According to Michael B. Katz at the University of Pennsylvania, United States welfare has its roots in Europe. More specifically, the welfare state's roots are in 17th century Elizabethan poor laws. There are 3 major areas of these Elizabethan poor laws, which were taxation, public assistance, and social insurance. Public assistance came to America mainly during the colonial age and was made prominent in the Great Depression in the 1930s, continued into 1974 when the Congress passed aid programs for the blind, elderly, and the needy, and in 1996, a temporary aid for needy families was started, and both of these that I just mentioned were started with federal funds. And then the Social Security and insurance agencies began in 19th century Europe and came to America with the Social Security Act of 1935, and this continued so that in 1960 to 1970, the amount of elderly poor people dropped significantly. And moving on to taxation. Taxation essentially was when low-income people would get money from wealthy business owners and real estate developers. This continued until 1975 when the Earned Income Tax Credit Bill was started. This was expanded under Bill Clinton in the 1990s, and this helps people from being below the poverty line. Now, these great developments in United States welfare systems have unfortunately gone downhill. For example, in December 2012, a monthly report by the Social Security Administration now says that there are 434,684 people on Social Security. And the U.S. Department of Labor in 2013 said that 5,590,000 people are on unemployment benefits. Obviously, these numbers show that the state welfare system is not as strong as intercommunity aid. As I said before, I will define welfare as mutual aid within a community, and I will be making an analysis on 3 major areas of welfare: unemployment, healthcare, and Social Security. I believe that federal welfare is inconsistent with a flourishing humanity, and I have 3 arguments to support my thesis. First, federal welfare misuses money. Second, federal welfare changes the true meaning from welfare, from virtue and gratitude to taxation and entitlement. And third, federal welfare takes away the personal aspect of community. My first contention with federal welfare is that it misuses money. Money is a physical, corruptible thing. Unfortunately, money has taken hold of welfare and corrupted it. For example, the collection of funds. Just throwing more money at a problem. You can't just collect money from someone and give it to somebody else and expect that to fix the problem. You're fixing a symptom. You're not fixing the solution. For example, federal spending on welfare has gone from $563 billion in fiscal 2008 to $746 billion in fiscal 2011. This is a 32% increase. Federal welfare is now 1/5 of the federal budget. And in state spending alone, $200 billion in 2008 to over $1 trillion in the last year. This is a 29% increase. We can't just give people money. That doesn't help them. People need spiritual revitalization, not just financial. Senator Jeff Sessions, who actually conducted the research of the numbers I just mentioned, said, quote, "No longer should we measure compassion by how much money the government spends, but by how many people we help to rise out of poverty." He recognizes that money isn't the solution. Mutual aid is. Also, donations and compassion should overcome this need to just give out money, to give and take. We should be willing to give. We shouldn't just have our government take money from us and give it to others. We should, as Christians and as citizens, be willing to help one another, willingly. So not only does federal welfare misuse money, but it changes the true meaning from welfare from virtue and gratitude to taxation and entitlement. Up until the last 200 years, there was no sense of entitlement because you worked for everything. Everything you had was your own. You earned it. Not only that, but everyone recognized that everything was a gift from God. They remembered the verse James 1:17, quote, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like the shifting shadows." We have gone from remembering that everything is a gift to having this mindset that we are entitled to have everything we want. But we're sinners, and we're not entitled to anything. We were not entitled to Christ coming down and saving us from our sins. He came willingly. In Philippians 2:6-8, Paul describes Christ as being, quote, "who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." We have gone from a focus on gratitude to a focus on desire. Because no one is entitled to welfare. You're not entitled to anything. Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher who studied how humans experience the world, recognizes this detrimental shift to desire on the self. He says, quote, "To attain something desired is to discover how vain it is. And though we live our lives in expectations of better things, we often at the same time long regretfully for what is past. The present, on the other hand, is regarded as something quite temporary, and serving only as the road to our goal. That is why most men discover when they look back on their life, they have the whole time been living ad interium, and are surprised to see that which they let go so by unregarded and unenjoyed was precisely their life, was precisely an expectation of which they lived. We can go on just desiring more things, and once we get it, we're just going to desire something else. This is a never-ending chain of desires. And that is what Arthur Schopenhauer recognized. Also, because of welfare, we have lost humility. We've lost gratitude. St. John Climacus, a 7th century monk, says, "Where there is no humility, all things rot." Without humility, there is no gratitude. And without gratitude, there's degradation of society. Because a society based on entitlements is inherently dehumanizing. Our society is based on entitlements. We lose this idea of gratitude, which is an essential Christian virtue. There are now laws that require that if you are needy, you have to go on welfare. But what if you don't want to go on welfare? What if you want to find an alternative means? That's inherently dehumanizing. You're treated like a number. You're treated like a statistic. You just get a check in the mail, and that's how the government's supposed to help you. That is inherently dehumanizing. So not only does federal welfare misuse money and change the true meaning of welfare from virtue and gratitude to taxation and entitlement, but federal welfare takes away the personal aspect of community. I would argue that community is essential to a successful welfare system. In Galatians 6 through 10, Paul says, quote, "Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers." We are called as Christians to help one another, to form communities, to aid one another. One of the essential parts of a community is an obligation. Unfortunately, we have lost an idea of an obligation to others, an obligation to God. Even if you're not a Christian, no one has an obligation to a higher being. They only focus on themselves and their own self-desires. I would also argue that a community is better than a check. Wouldn't you rather have someone bringing you a nice, warm bowl of chicken noodle soup when you're sick rather than a government official sending you a check in the mail? John Wesley, a Methodist preacher, calls his followers to do the same. He says, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can." He recognizes that we need to do good to others always, to anyone, non-believer or believer. He also says that Christians should be wise with managing their money so that they can do things like give to the poor and help their local neighbor. He says, quote, "Earn all you can, give all you can, save all you can." And the Bible also tells us to do so. So would you rather have a politician shoveling out money to you, or would you rather have a youth group coming and bringing you cookies at Christmas and singing you carols? That is the big difference here. It's very personal, or that you're just a number. That is what is inherently dehumanizing about the federal welfare system, is we are treated like numbers. So I have made 3 attacks against the federal welfare system. First, federal welfare misuses money. Second, federal welfare changes the true meaning of welfare from virtue and gratitude to taxation and entitlement. And third, federal welfare takes away the personal aspect of community. But some people may not agree with me. People may say that if the state doesn't provide welfare, then no one else will. But I would argue that the church is the best organization to provide welfare. For example, Byzantium. In an article entitled "Embodying the New Society, the Byzantine Christian Instinct of Philanthropy," John A. McGuckin says, quote, "The hospital attached to the Studios Monastery was renowned in the city for its care." Now, the Studios Monastery was a very influential monastery in Constantinople. And this hospital that was supported by the monastery became a symbol of the church. The church was able to help others. But others say that the church is not able to do this because the state is pushing the church to the periphery of society. Religion has now become whatever one wants it to be. It's become a recreational activity. It's become a personal and private belief. There's no more any public outworking of Christianity. And so that's what people are saying against my thesis. And my second, some people also may say that there needs to be a separation of church and state. The state provides for everything, while the church is just an institution of faith. They say that maybe the Christians can't provide for the Jews. The Jews and Christians don't have the same beliefs. But like the Christians did in the time of the Romans, the Jews could create their own parallel structures. They could create their own welfare reforms based on their beliefs. For example, the Church of the Latter-day Saints, which granted some of their views may be a little heretical, but they have the right idea. Julie B. Beck of the Welfare Responsibilities of the Relief Society president says, quote, "We become self-reliant through obtaining sufficient knowledge, education, and literacy, by managing money and resources wisely, being spiritually strong, preparing for emergencies and eventualities, and by having physical health and emotional well-being." They recognize that we can do things on our own. We don't need the state to do everything for us. And if the church was knowledgeable and educated and had these qualities that I just mentioned, a welfare system based in the church would be a lot stronger. So even though I have made 3 attacks and refuted 2 major points that people may say against my thesis, we need to understand that federal welfare misuses money, focuses on taxation and entitlement, and destroys the personal aspect of community. If our welfare system is based upon money, harmful qualities, and does not allow for personal satisfaction, then it will fail. The federal welfare system promised us help, but gave us hardship. As long as federal welfare is supported, the people who are in need will never be truly aided unless there is a revival of the ways in which welfare is accomplished. Supporters of federal welfare allow for humanity to become worthless by treating humans like numbers. When true mutual aid is accomplished in a community, Christianity has won another foothold in the battle against its enemies. Now let's go back to the Amish. If they were able to do community and that kind of a tragic circumstance, why can't we do it in less tragic circumstances? We need welfare based on love and gratitude, and that is what is going to help get all of us back to Christianity and to aid everyone. So I challenge you to form your own welfare systems. Encourage your church to go out there and educate people about welfare. Help one another. Remember that the person sitting next to you is someone you're supposed to aid daily. You are called by God to help the person sitting next to you. So remember that and go out and aid one another. Thank you.